And this year, guys, they went 7-5. Centerfield's Louisville turnaround may be the best 5-year Power 5 coaching performance outside of Ryan Day at Ohio State. The Cardinals beat Wake Forest on the road and eventually the ACC Coastal Champion Virginia at home. They did not get a run over by Kentucky on Saturday, but a 5-game improvement after the train wreck that was 2018 is deserving of a plaudits, even if the defense still needs a lot of work. They gave him an A in that category. The next coach, guys, is Manny Diaz at Miami. Under Mark Richt, the team went 7-6. This year they went 6-6. Miami can't match last year's disappointing record with a bowl game win. With a bowl game win, and you can argue that 2019 has been more disappointing than 2018. Diaz's first year in charge of his hometown team was ugly to start, and even uglier to finish. Oh, they took the goal off the board. Miami won 3 straight games to pull the 6-4 before an embarrassing 34-20 loss to Florida International at Marlins Park in the phenomenal week of the season, and 27-17 loss Saturday to a Duke team that had already eliminated from a bowl. Diaz enters 2020 needing a quick turnaround. They give him a D- in that. North Carolina, Mac Brown. Under Larry Fedora, the team went 2-9. Under Mac Brown, they went 6-6. It made sense for North Carolina to fire Fedora after he went 5-18 in 2017 and 2018. It didn't make much sense at the time for the school to hire Brown to come back 22 years after he left for Texas. Well, it worked out pretty well. Brown is taking the team to a bowl game for the first time since 2016. In addition to beating Miami, Brown's team also won against South Carolina, Duke, and NC State. Oh, UNC is also the team that came the closest to beating Clemson. Gives them a B on that one. The Big 12 is next, guys, and this is Kansas, Les Miles. Under David Betty, the team went 3-9. Well, Les Miles had the same record, 3-9. Kansas won just 6 games in 4 years under Betty, so Les Miles at least brought some excitement to Lawrence. The Jayhawks managed to upset Boston College and Texas Tech and raise their competitive level. That's a start. They give them a B-. Next guys up is Kansas State, and this is Chris Klieman. Under Bill Snyder, they went 5-7. This year, the guys, they went 8-4. It's never easy replacing a legend, but Chris Klieman did about as well as a K-State fan could have hoped for in year one. He brought a sense of optimism back to Manhattan with a tough, consistently competitive brand of football. His team even upset mighty Oklahoma. They gave him an A. Texas Tech, Matt Wells, taking over for Cliff Kingsbury. He went 5-7 in 2018. They went 4-8 this year. Red Raiders lost 6 of 7 Big 12 games down the stretch, though 4 of those losses came by a possession or less. It was more of the same we saw in years past. Second best Big 12 offense, worst Big 12 defense. Matt Wells might have more work to do when he realizes when he arrived in Lubbock. They gave him a C. West Virginia, Neil Brown. Last year was Daniel Holmgren who took them 8-4. This year the Mountaineers went 5-7. Now they tied the game with a goal from Victor Hetman. West Virginia has always expected to take a step back this year, and Neil Brown's team had nice wins over Kansas State and TCU down the stretch. Brown started the year with Oklahoma transfer Austin Kendall at quarterback, but played Bowling Green transfer Jared Dodge in the last 3 games, reserving his red shirt. Dodge looks like the quarterback of the future in Morgantown. He gave them B. The next conference, guys, is the Big Ten. Maryland's Mike Locksley took over for Matt Canada, who was 5-7. This year, Maryland went 3-9. Locksley seemed like a natural fit to dig Maryland out of the mess left behind DJ Durkin and the tragic death of Jordan McNair. The Terps started the year 3-2, one of the worst teams in the country from there, losing 7 straight. Locksley was supposed to land the top local recruits, but hasn't landed a commitment from any of the top 20 players in the state. Yikes, and that's a D for him. Ryan Day, Ohio State. Under Urban Meyer, they went 13-1 in 2018. They are 12-0 so far this year. Ryan Day inherited a gold mine of talent from Urban Meyer, but the nonstop drama that came with Meyer has gone by the wayside. Other than weekly visits from Fox, the Buckeyes look better than ever and are locked for a college football playoff. They gave him an A. Next up, guys, is Conference USA. Charlotte Will Haley, who took over for Brad Lambert, who was 5-7 in 2018. This year, Charlotte went 7-5. So they got an historic downtrodden Austrian pre-program to 8-4, and now the Wild just got another goal. They're up 4-3. Go 8-4, so it shouldn't surprise people. He got Charlotte to do its first ever bowl game. 49ers Cup board wasn't completely bare after a 5-7 record in 2018. Haley brought some much-needed new energy to the program, and the team responded by winning 5 straight, entering the Bahama Bowl, Grade A. Western Kentucky. Tyson Helton took over for Mike Stanford, who was 3-9 in 2018. This year, Western Kentucky was 8-4. Kentucky went back to Jeff Brom's tree with Tyson Helton, and it paid off in year one with one of the more impressive turnarounds in the country. The Hilltoppers shook off Week 1 loss to FCSC Central Arkansas by going 6-2 in Conference USA play. WKU allowed just 20.1 points per game, second best in the conference. And they gave them an A. Now, here's some independents. Hugh Freeze took over at Liberty, took over for Turner Gill, who was 6-6. This year they were 7-5. Hugh Freeze shook off a scary and unintentional amusing situation with his back early in the year to get Liberty to a bowl game for the first time. The Flames didn't exactly play the toughest schedule. They lost to Rutgers, but it was still nice and accomplishing to go to a bowl game in their first year as a full FBS member. He gets a B+. UMass. Walt Bell took over for Mark Whipple. Whipple was 4-8. This year, UMass went 1-11. Last month, UMass was apparently down to between 40 and 50 healthy scholarship players. So it's no wonder why the team struggled so much more than usual. The Minutemen were horrendous on defense, allowing an average of 561.2 yards and 52.7 points per game. Both were the worst in the country by a considerable margin, grade D. In the MAC, at Akron, Tom Arth took over for Terry Bowden, who was 4-8. This year, the Akron went 0-12. Akron was the only team that didn't win a game in 2019. The Zips' closest brush with victory came in a 20-17 loss to Miami of Ohio on November 20th. 10 of those 12 losses were by 11 points or more. It's hard to win at Akron, and an 8-win season in 2015 is the best in program history. Arth learned that firsthand in 2019. They gave him a D. Bowling Green. Scott LaFleur took over for Mike Jinks. Jinks was 3-9, and the record was also 3-9 this year. Bowling Green's defense improved slightly in 2019, but the offense regressed mightily under the former Boston College offensive coordinator. The Falcons averaged 16 points per game, 8 points fewer than in 2008, and 4.6 yards per play down from the 5.2 in 2018. The culprit was a rushing offense and did not improve despite a big switch in offensive schemes. They gave him a C+. Central Michigan. Jim McElhain took over for John Bohanga. Bohanga was 1-11. McElhain was 8-4. 7-game lead for the Chippewas. Made it in the win column is the biggest year-over improvement for any first-year head coach. And Florida fans may be surprised to know it's due to CMU's offense. The Chips averaged 15 points per game in 2018. That totally jumped to nearly 33 in 2019, thanks to the dynamic rushing duo of Kobe Lewis and Jonathan Ward. The two backs have combined for over 2,000 yards and 26 rushing touchdowns. They gave McElhain an A. Northern Illinois. Thomas Hammock took over for Rod Carey. Carey was 8-6 in 2018. Hammock was 5-7 in 2019. Northern Illinois overperformed in 2018 and finished 2 games above 500 despite getting outscored by its opponents. It's not terribly surprising that the Huskies' win total regressed in 2019, but NYU never gave up more points than they did a year ago on defense. They gave up 4.8 yards per play in 2018 and gave up 6.2 yards per play in 2019. No corresponding improvements from the offense. By Hammock's previous offensive coaching experience, they gave him a C. The Mountain West. At Utah State, Gary Anderson took over for Matt Wells. Wells went 11-2 in 2018. This year, they went 7-5. Anderson came back to Utah State to replace Wells, who left for Texas Tech, with just 2 starters coming back on offense. Some regression was expected, but damn, that regression hit hard. After averaging 47.5 points per game in 2018, the Aggies scored just 28.2 points in 2019. Defense is giving up a touchdown more per game did in 2018. As well, crazy enough to win a bowl game would make 2019 the second best for Anderson's 5 total seasons at the school. They gave him a C minus. Pac-12, Colorado's Mel Tucker took over for Mike McIntyre. McIntyre was 5-7 in 2018. That was the same record that the Buffaloes had in 2019. Padres for keeping the streak alive. Mel, the 2019 season is the third straight 5-7 season for the Buffaloes, and the seventh time in the last 20 years that Colorado has finished the season with 7 losses. The offense wasn't as good as it was in 2018, despite the return of Steven Montez and Lavasky Chanat, and the defense is slightly worse than Tucker's first season when it was McIntyre's last. They gave him a C. In the Sun Belt, just one Appalachian State, Elia Drinkowitz, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, took over for Scott Satterfield. Satterfield was 11-2 in 2018. Elijah Drinkowitz is 11-1 so far. There isn't much room for improvement on an 11-2 season, but Dirkowitz's first year in Boone has gone swimmingly with wins over both North Carolina and South Carolina. The offense is averaging 39 points per game, and the Mountaineer defense gave up less than 20 per game. The only blemish is a Halloween home loss to Georgia Southern in miserable conditions. Had App State won the game, the Mountaineers would have had a real shot at the Cotton Bowl. They gave him an A. Coastal Carolina, Jamie Chadwell took over for Joe Magala, 5-7, the same record they had this year. Coastal is one on the cusp of the first bowl berth in program history. The Chanticleers beat Kansas on the road in week 2 and also beat UMass. But 2 3-game losing streaks in the Sun Belt played ensured that Coastal would finish 5-7 again. They gave him a B minus. Texas State, Jax Vladivol took over for Everett Withers, 3-9. Same record they had, guys. This year, the Bobcats returned 19 starters and did not improve a lick in Spurchill's first season. An offense that struggled in 2018, struggled again in 2019, ranking 122nd points per game. Defense got worse too. Texas State did beat Georgia State through. That's about it all for highlights. The other 2 wins came over Nicholls State and South Alabama team that only won 1 game. C minus. And the last one, guys, is Troy. Chip Lindsey took over for Neil Brown. Brown had Troy at 10-3 in 2018. This year, Troy finished 5-7. A streak of 3 straight winning seasons of 10 or more wins came to a screeching halt. Defense that returned 6 starters came up with 35 points per game in 2019, ranked 116th in the country. Troy was 22nd in the country in 2018, needing a win over the last 2 weeks of the season against another Louisiana and App State to secure bowl eligibility. Troy was outscored 101-16. They gave him a C minus. So there are, guys, some of the grades that they gave for some of the first-year coaches in there. So that was that. Some of those coaches had good seasons. Some of those coaches are going to be having to figure it out in year 2. Guys, here are all the college football conference championships, and one of them is starting tomorrow, and my team that I picked to win the Pac-12 has a shot to win it all tomorrow, as Oregon will play Utah at 8 o'clock tomorrow night in Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. On Saturday, there's a big slate of games. The Big 12 championship game between Baylor and Oklahoma is at 12 o'clock. The MAC championship between Miami of Ohio and Central Michigan is at 12 p.m. The Sun Belt championship game between Louisiana and Appalachian State is at 12 p.m. At 1:30, Conference USA, UAB at Florida Atlantic. The AAC championship game, Cincinnati at Memphis at 3:30. The Mountain West championship will be Hawaii at Boise State. The SEC championship game is also on at 4 as Georgia plays LSU. The SWAC conference championship is Southern at Alcorn State. That's also at 4. The ACC championship game between Virginia and Clemson is on at 7:30. And to wrap up the championship games on Saturdays, the Big Ten championship game between number 1 Ohio State and Wisconsin. So those are the games, guys, that are going to be on this weekend. But that's just that way, guys. I mean, we're going to have to wait and see how that